Hey Neppers, it's me, Wild Neptune. Today is one of the most exciting days we look forward to in the year of Epic 7, and that is the day we get the balance update notices. What's gonna get buffed? What's gonna change? Any shakeups in the meta coming up. Your favorite hero might be on this list. And before we get to it, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, do all of that. Thanks for the support, and let's get going. Alright, developer notes. So, we have 7 heroes, 2 artifacts, and subject to be changed for 13, which is in about 2 weeks. So here they are, the targets are Last Rider Crow, okay, well deserved. Closer Charles, fine. Ken, okay. Red Lilius, okay, yeah, there she needs it. Ilyanov, wow. Tywin, okay. And Christy, so a 3-star also. Alright, so a few surprises here. One of them is that Melissa is not on this list. Also the artifacts, Crown of Glory, and Ancient Dragon's Legacy. I believe Crown of Glory is Tywin's artifact, and Ancient Dragons is Mortellix's, or the Great Mortellix, excuse me, artifact here. So let's get into the changes and see if any of them are going to be good. Alright, we'll start off with Last Rider Crow. Good LRK, one of the golden boys, a relic of the past, as people say. So let's go over his first one here. Code 00, this is his passive. And the changes are going to be, now when he is attacked, by any attack, the skill cooldowns of the caster, which is only the S3, decreases by 1 turn, and if it's an AoE, it decreases by an additional turn. So if he's attacked by like a random attack, boom, 1 tool cooldown off. By an AoE, it's 2. And the barrier strength is also increased. His S3 will now also do scaling damage based on speed and health, which is important because he does get a speed buff with his S1. Now, Smilegate has done this in the past where they'll add more scaling or another scaling and they'll nerf the one of them in the background. So even though, yes, he gets both of them, I would not be surprised if the increased damage is not that much, because I do kind of expect his health scaling damage to go down a little bit here. Either that or the speed scaling damage is just going to be like really bad. One of the two. I don't think it's going to be a humongous boost. Maybe like a 15% or something like that. I don't know. That's just a guess. Also, the cooldown is being increased to 7 turns, up from 6, and this is obviously because of his passive change that's going to happen. So let's read this little blurb here and see what they say about him. So, Last Rider Crow is a knight hero who can shift the tide of battle by protecting his allies from enemy AoE attacks, okay. But his performance was limited if the enemy rarely or never used AoE attacks. That's right. Also limited because of the frenzy, right? Okay, anyway. So yeah, they're basically saying that the changes are to increase his effectiveness, where now single target attacks will benefit him and stuff like that. Okay, so as far as I think about these changes, obviously they're good changes. They're things that he needed. Right now in the meta, LRK is not used that much. He's used as a tech sometimes against a Tywin, non-injury rebellions when you know that that's the case. Some other like niche AoE applications. So here's the problem. If the enemy team only has single target attacks or a dominant number of single target attacks, they still don't have to attack him. So this passive here, the new one, doesn't matter in those cases, which still makes him kind of tricky to use. Now, against heavy AoE teams, where he can be teched in, into those cases, he's suddenly really good, right? I feel like here, his matchups against teams or stuff that he's not that good in, he only gets marginally better in, right? Like, not enough where you would really want to pick him. But in cases where he's like right now, like, okay, right? Like, decent, he becomes good to great in. So that's what I feel like this is going to do. It's going to make it where he becomes a viable counter pick to some strategies. But it's not going to really help him in the matchups he's bad in. Which I think is a good design buff-wise. Okay, Closer Charles. Only one change on his S3, and the change is this skill cannot trigger a counterattack. I'm very tired of this happening. And not just because I'm a player who does use a lot of counterattack heroes. Like, what? Like, there's no, like, the heroes don't get things that say, hey, your speed set that you have doesn't matter, right? But so many heroes have this cannot trigger counterattack stuff on the skills now. For some heroes, like AoE, like Soul Weavers, I can understand. But for a DPS hero, where you have to weigh the pros and cons, it's kind of, it's really annoying, in my opinion, that this is just something that you slap on. Okay, but in the long run, right now at least, I don't think this is going to really change anything. Nobody's going to use him because of this that hasn't used him before, and it's not really going to change a lot of the matchups that he's been in. Now, what this does do is it does make him better against Aiden, which I think is probably the most important thing right here. But that's really it. Ken is up next. This is his 95th change, and that might not be an exaggeration. Just Ken is one of the most changed heroes in the game. So let's see what they're going to do. His S2 is going to now grant 40 Fighting Spirit every time you use it. Okay, fine. Before, it was just when it was defeated. Not Ken, the enemy was defeated, which felt very bad. Because how often are you killing something with Ken? Not very. And his S3 is being changed, where... Okay, it's actually being nerfed a little bit. So instead of starting with 50 and gaining 5 when he's attacked, it's just a straight 40. Remember that his S3 requires, I believe, 80 Fighting Spirit to use. So 40 here, plus 40 from the S2, means he goes into his S3 on his second turn. And his S2 is on a 3-turn cooldown, I believe. And when you have the Vigor buff, you ignore ER on the S2. So after you do that, in a couple of turns, you have an ignore ER defense break on the S2. And you gain more Fighting Spirit. I think this is better for him, but I still think he suffers from the same issues he does now with this. He just takes too long to get value out of his kit, and he doesn't have and even though he has the health scaling, he doesn't have the push or survivability as, say, a unit like Milim with evasion and stuff like that, or even a Fire Ravi who has the AoE stun, the push when she's hit, increased effectiveness. And Fire Ravi right now, she's one of my favorite heroes, but she's not in a great spot, and I still feel like she's better than this new Ken. Alright, Fire Lilius. Some of you might know, Fire Lilius was one of my most picked heroes when I was in the WC back in 2021, so I'm really excited to see what they're changing about her, and that is a lot of green. So, the S1 increases crit chance by 50% while attacking. Okay, so it looks like they're going to maybe go into the damage Lilius. Important to know that the S1 is health scaling. The S3 obviously is scaling based on the ally's highest attack list right now. The S2 is being changed a lot, so let's read this. After an enemy uses a non-attack skill, dispels one debuff from the caster, Lilius, and activates suppression against the enemy caster. Suppression can only be activated once every 2 turns. Suppression provokes the target for 1 turn and grants a barrier to the caster for 2 turns. Barrier strength decreases the potential of the caster's max health, and the barrier strength is being decreased overall. I mean, fine. And the enhancements are barrier strength increases. It would not, we'll read the blip at the bottom, but it would not surprise me if after all of these are, you know, updated, that the barrier strength might be about the same or maybe better. I don't know, we'll have to see. Her S3 is being changed. She's also getting a 50% crit boost from her on her S3. And the damage dealt is being increased. So it looks like they're really pushing you to build Fire Lilius at about 50% crit for the damage. Which is good, because I feel like this pushes Lilius in one or two directions. Either a damage build, full damage build with a crit chance, everything like that, or maybe a split build where you still want to have the crit chance, but you also want to maybe add effectiveness on for the S2. So let's see what they change here. What they say here. Lilius is a knight who's capable of protecting allies, so they're basically doing a lot of stuff right now. Her problem right now is that she's too much of a tweener hero. She can do a little of everything, but she can't do anything well enough to be useful. Okay, so everything will be changed here. Okay, yeah. I think that these are good changes. There are a lot of heroes right now that use non-attack skills to start out with, and this will definitely hurt them a lot. Now, it's worth noting that this is still subject to ER, so unless you have that effectiveness, you're not gonna hit things like, what's her face? Rand's girlfriend. Ahmed. Right? And if the enemy has immunity, that is also not going to be a thing here, as immunity will stop the provoke, unfortunately. So it is kind of a game of chicken type deal, but these are definitely well-deserved changes, and I do think it will help her a lot, especially because it focuses the direction that Lilius is going to be used in. Ilyanov, so Rush is the S1, and the damage on it is being increased. Fine. Sure, I guess now, when you don't get the S2 proc, you're mildly less upset about it. Great, S2. The change is going to be, instead of increasing defense, it's going to do additional damage equivalent to 50% of the injuries inflicted on the target. Okay, that is good. So if they have a lot of injury, you do a lot more damage. Really pushing the injury thing here. And Repel, which is S3, now it also inflicts injury. And the damage dealt is being increased. Alright, so we now have a fire injury damage dealer. So we have our grass one, which is Mortalix, or Alencia, more likely. We have our fire one, which is Ilyanov. And we also have our water. Water. Do we have a water injury damage? No. Whatever. But anyway, we have a fire injury damage dealer now. Which is good, I suppose. I do think we are slowly getting to the point, though, where injury is becoming a potential problem down the road, in my opinion. It's a very strong mechanic in the right circumstances. And this is interesting, because when injury first came out, it was like a joke. Nobody needed it. And now it's actually kind of broken sometimes, in my opinion. So these are definitely good. The downside is that it does hurt her survivability, but I think the trade-off with increased damage, maybe you can sacrifice some of her damage stats for a more innate bulk because of these changes here, and she'll still do good things. I also think that it helps her in what matchups you want to put her into and what combos you want to draft her into. I've been trying to use Ilyanov, recently, just as she is right now, and she has been so hard to use. And the gear I have on her is really good, okay? So, I do think that this is definitely going to help her quite a bit, as it gives her more of a counter pick potential, or to punish maybe those high HP teams and things like that. We have Worse Flan, Tywin. Okay, so only change on the S1 is that the soul burn is changing to this, and the chance will be from 75 to 100%. Why? Okay. Arrowell has a 75% chance to dispel 2 buffs. Whatever. This just seems like a really, really weak soul burn right now in the year 2023. But there is a lot of green here, so let's see what is being changed. This is hers S2. Okay, so the change is going to be, right now, it's the push with the attack and CR boost and stuff like that, but it's going to be changed into immune to debuffs which prevent movement. So this is sleep and stun, right now at least. When the ally in the back row has a debuff, which prevents movement after being attacked, activates Commanding Shout on the target. Can be activated once every 2 turns. Commanding Shout dispels all debuffs from that ally and grants immunity and the barrier for 2 turns. And barrier strength increases before the caster's max health. Okay. So he's basically kind of like a automatic Troublemaker Crozet without the push, but that's pretty good. And his S3 is being changed where he now increases the defense of all allies with 2 turns instead of just himself for 3 turns, which is also getting 1 more soul, which is a good change. It helps his team's survivability. I always felt it was kind of stupid he only gave himself defense buff. I mean, he's a knight, right? His job is to protect the people behind him. Okay, but okay. This is a good change. I will say, the knight roster is very stacked right now. I don't think there's ever been a time in the game where more defensive-oriented knights have been viable than at the moment. So it might be hard to see how Tywin slots into this. Now, what this does do, though, it actually makes him really good against a Tywin. Because he can't be stunned. And he also protects the back row from being stunned. So, yeah, a Tywin can ignore ER, but he can't stop this new passive that the blue Tywin has. So definitely interesting there. I do like how they are addressing how good a Tywin has been recently, even though I will say, I think that people are being kind of lazy right now in figuring out ways to fight a Tywin, because I don't think he's as good as the numbers might suggest at the moment. Finally, last hero before the artifacts, we get to Christy, a 3-star knight. Also, I might say, one of my favorite heroes overall in the game. I think she's very cute. So, a lot of green again. So, instead of her passive being a 15% to attack, to counterattack when being attacked, after being attacked, when the caster does not have a debuff, which is pretty easy to do given the fact that she's an ER stacker, combat readiness of the caster and the ally in the back row increases by 20%. Can be activated once per turn. That's pretty good. Now, is this game breaking? No. But I can see, because of all this back row shenanigans we're getting, a protect the back row type of strategy, where maybe you stack a bunch of like Christie's, a Tyrant, stuff like I don't know, and put a mutant in the back row and just be, hey, try to kill it, type deal. Okay, that's decent. Again, I don't think it's gonna make her super usable. Again, she's a knight with a very niche application right now, so I don't think it's gonna really increase her playstyle that much, especially because she's a 3-star without an SC. And as I said before, 3 stars without specialty changes have traditionally found it very difficult to carve a niche out in World Arena. And now the artifacts, Crown of Glory, Knight artifact, are being changed from, instead of now increasing defense, it will, when an ally suffers an attack that targets all allies, increases damage suffered by 10 to 20%, it still has the remove soul thing. And when more than one damage effect is applied, only, okay, yeah, so the damage thing. Alright, good change, I suppose. Only gonna be used for heroes where you're gonna tech them into heavy AoE. So this is more of a artifact to help you in matchups where you're counterpicking something versus a use all the time type artifact, which is okay. And Ancient Dragon's Legacy, another knight artifact. This is Mortellix's, and instead of the crit chance increase, it will change to, after the caster uses a non-attack skill, decreases cooldown of all allies by 1 turn. Wow. Okay, still has a chance to increase crit hit damage of the caster, and skill cooldown reduction effect will be applied once. Alright, so this is obviously meant to be used against Lua on Lilius. Because this might as well be Lilius' artifact now. This is what happens. Lua uses S3. Denji uses S2. The non-attack skill triggers Lilius' non-attack skill, which triggers this, which cancels out Lua's skill cooldown, that also gives Lilius the crit damage increase, and remember that Lilius is getting her crit chance increase. So yeah, match made in heaven. Do I think it's enough? No, because you need this artifact, and Lilius to fight a hero, which is not a fair comparison. Especially when Lua will definitely cycle faster than Lilius does. And this can only happen one turn. So I do think that in a vacuum, it will help, but I also don't think it'll be enough. But I do think that this is going to be the tech against Lua for the foreseeable future. Alright, that's the video. Those are the changes. In my opinion, definitely one of the best and most exciting balance updates we've gotten in past memory. I think that every single change at least was decent. I don't think anything was bad. Maybe some things weren't as impactful as maybe they could have been, but definitely a lot of heroes and even a couple of artifacts too. Looking forward to next time. It's been a good one. Nep out.